Let's get rolling on a Tuesday. Glasses in session. We go to the Glasser guest line. Check in with Clayton Safey, who joins us. Give Clayton a follow on X at CSayF23, staff writer and social for Wolverine.com. Clayton, great having you back on the show, man. Let's talk about Bryce Underwood, right? He was the big story going into the season for Michigan. We saw his debut on Saturday against New Mexico. 21 for 31, 251 yards, and a touchdown. Overall, what were your thoughts? What did head coach Sharon Moore have to say after watching Bryce Underwood make his first college start?
Yeah, I thought from warm-ups to him walking off the field, after the game, he looked really poised, in control, didn't look like a freshman. Sharon Moore actually said yesterday that he looked like a guy who'd been playing college football for a few years. Now, it was just New Mexico, but he checked every box in that game and actually left a lot out there that I think he could do, including running. They didn't ask him to do any of that. He's a dynamic runner, great athlete, and I think we're going to see some of that this Saturday night against Oklahoma when they need him to, potentially in the red zone when it gets a little bit, field gets condensed and things like that. But, the throws were on target. I thought he made good decisions. I thought that the ball was hardly in harm's way, which is huge for a freshman as well. He had 10 incompletions, like you said, 21 of 31, but 4 of those were drops. There were a couple others that probably could have been caught as well that I wouldn't necessarily categorize as a drop, but still not a bad throw. And a couple plays where maybe the timing was off. There was he could have had another touchdown if he put a little more loft on a ball that got tipped, things like that to clean up. So really encouraging start for him. He just didn't look like a freshman. Now it'll be a bigger test this weekend, which makes it so exciting, but so far so good. It was, he passed that one with flying colors.
And it also helps to have a running back like Justice Haynes, the Alabama transfer. Clayton, 16 carries, $159, 3 touchdowns against New Mexico. What do you expect Michigan's game plan to be going into Oklahoma? Do you think they're going to want to give Haynes the ball 20, 25 times and lean on the ground game? Do you think because maybe Oklahoma's going to sell out on the run and Underwood's going to get some opportunities, they're going to maybe let him try and win the game on his arm? What do you think the game plan is going in for Michigan against Oklahoma?
Well, I think they'll be ready for anything and kind of see what works. And another element of this new offense that Michigan has under coordinator Chip Lindsey is that they're going to run a lot of run-pass options. So the play, maybe up to Bryce Underwood and what decision he makes after the play begins. They had 19 of those on Saturday. 13 of them ended up being a handoff. 6 of them were passes by Bryce Underwood. So if Oklahoma does want to sell out, I think Michigan will have no problem letting Bryce Underwood pull the ball away and throw, maybe look to run himself if there's a lane there. So, they want to run the ball. And I think that there are going to be some opportunities to do that. Watching Oklahoma's game against Illinois State on Saturday, an FCS opponent, you can't take too much away. But Illinois State ran the ball a little bit. They gashed them on a few plays. They had a few explosive runs, even though they lost 35-3. So I think that's definitely something Oklahoma is going to want to clean up this weekend. And Michigan's probably watching that tape thinking, okay, we have some opportunities here. But Justice Haynes, what a debut from him. It's the most by a Michigan running back in a debut since 1970.
Wow.
Broke the 2 long ones, one for a touchdown, one to the 1-yard line, and then scored on 1st and goal from there the next play. So he's physical. He's really fast in the open field. And he just kind of is a great balance, is a dynamic athlete. So Jordan Marshall's the other guy. They're still going to use him a lot. They're the 1-2 punch. He didn't have as good of a day on Saturday, but if one of those guys gets going, whether it's Marshall or Haynes, I'd expect them to lean on them pretty heavily.
And then the wide receiver room, Clayton, you had Marlon Klein with a really good game for Michigan on Saturday. 6 catches for 93 yards and a touchdown. Throughout the season, would you expect him to probably be the top wide receiver for Michigan throughout the season?
Well, he's actually a tight end, and they lose Colston Loveland, number 10 overall pick, to the Chicago Bears last year. And Marlon Klein's 93 yards in that game on Saturday would have been the second highest in Colston Loveland's career. Again, it's against New Mexico, but they were going to him early and often. He looked really good running up the seam, catching, running after the catch, things like that. So he's going to be a nice option for them. I think a few wide receivers emerged. Donovan McCulley had a few shorter catches, but he's their number 1 wide out in terms of that position. Channing Goodwin had a nice big catch. Kendrick Bell had a 30-yard gain as well. So Underwood has definitely developed some chemistry with those receivers. That's a group that was, not good enough last season. The quarterback play was a big issue, but the receivers weren't as good either. And I thought they got off to a good start on Saturday. So he's got some weapons to work with. Maybe not the elite, guys that maybe they'll have down the road if recruits continue to watch how good Bryce Underwood can be. But for now, I think they've got a solid core of guys that it seems like he has, developed that cohesion with.
We're talking Michigan with Clayton Sayfie. Give Clayton a follow on X at CSAF23, staff writer social for Wolverine.com. All right, Clayton, let's get into the big game on Saturday. Michigan and Oklahoma. What would you say is your biggest concern going into that game from a Wolverine perspective?
I think Michigan's offensive line has to show up and set the tone. And, as much as Justice Haynes had a really good game on Saturday, they also had quite a few runs that went for 3 yards or fewer. I think it was, well over half, that didn't really amount to much. And then he broke a couple big ones to kind of get that yardage up, which is impressive, right? You can't take those away. But I think a little bit more consistency in the run game will be important. I thought the pass protection was good, but, Michigan did a good job keeping Bryce Underwood on the move, getting the ball out quickly, things like that. Oklahoma's got a great defensive line. They've got a deep defensive front. Brent Venables is a great defensive coordinator. He's calling the plays for them now on that side of the ball again this season. So he's going to throw a lot of different looks at Bryce Underwood and that offensive line. They've got to communicate well in the noise, which is going to be a challenge. And then the quarterback play on either side, right? It's going to come down to maybe a few plays here or there, whether it's avoiding the mistakes or making the mistakes and the defense capitalizing, or creating some big plays through the air. Bryce Underwood against John Mateer, the number one recruit in the country against the number one transfer portal quarterback in the country in John Mateer. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is a good storyline. I like that. Defensively, what would you say is the biggest concern, the biggest thing you'd be worried about with that Michigan defense going up against John Mateer? They gave up 17 against New Mexico. Probably not a lot of people thought they give up that many points. What did you see out of the defense that maybe makes you a little hesitant against that Oklahoma offense?
Yeah, I think it's maybe Michigan's secondary and the corners specifically going up against what I think is a really good, or really solid, I would say, revamped wide receiving core that Oklahoma has. Deion Burks looked really good on Saturday. Keontez, forgetting his last name, I was just watching this game. Number 9 looked really good as well and dynamic. The tight end, number 12. I'm just, going to go with numbers now. It looked good. It converted linebacker, but it apparently runs a 10-3 100-meter dash, got great speed. So he's got John Mateer's got guys to work with. He can run around and find open receivers downfield. He can run as well. He's had a few tough scrambles, took some hits, and had a nice design quarterback run at the goal line. So it's going to be containing a mobile quarterback and sticking on those receivers down the field. Jair Hill, Michigan's number one corner, had a couple mistakes on Saturday, allowed a touchdown, had a pass interference in the end zone. They're going to have to clean some of those things up. And then, John Mateer, he went 30-37 this last game, nearly 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. But those 7 incompletions, I think 4 or 5 times he put the ball in harm's way where they could have been intercepted. One of them was picked off. And then a couple other, they got their hands on it. So if Michigan's DBs get their hands on the football, they got to come down with it, make a play. As they talk about tips and overthrows, we got to get those. It could come down to that either way with, Bryce Underwood in his first road start. We'll see if he's able to avoid turnovers. And John Mateer, who's turned it over quite a bit against Power 4 teams in his career, can he avoid the big mistake as well? And can Michigan capitalize if he does?
Clayton, before we let you go, what is your score prediction for Saturday night in Norman? Who do you think ends up winning the game?
Man, I haven't thought a ton about it. It's a little early. I'll go with something. I got Michigan winning close, maybe 24-21, something like that. But again, I just think it's such a coin flip type of game. I see that on BetMGM. Last I looked, it was 5.5 points in favor of Oklahoma. It's actually grown since the preseason. So kind of interesting that Vegas is moving that way. Maybe it's the Sharps. Maybe it's a lot of the fan bases. But either way, I expect a really close game, somewhat low scoring.
It is interesting. That summer line was Oklahoma 2.5, and now they're all the way up to 5.5, so maybe a little overreaction in the New Mexico game. We'll see. Clayton riding with the Wolverines in that one. Clayton Sayfie, give him a follow on X at CSAF23, staff writer social for Wolverine.com. Clayton, always appreciate the time, man. Enjoy the game on Saturday. I hope to catch up again soon.
Love it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.